They laughed first. That's always how it starts. Comfortable, arrogant, certain you'd stay predictable, quiet, manageable. But control is a fragile thing. One crack and the whole illusion shatters. You notice the shift before they did. The pauses. The overreactions. The fear dressed up as confidence. Now they're scrambling, calling it chaos, calling it luck. Funny thing is, none of this surprised you. You were ready long before they started to panic. They walked in thinking the world owed them something, thinking confidence was a mask they could wear and never remove. They strutted, they smiled, they charmed, and everyone nodded along like puppets in a theater, pretending to be convinced. But you saw through it. Oh, you saw it. Confidence isn't built in a day. It's carved from experience, from the messes you survive, from the nights you spend staring at walls, questioning every choice you ever made. And theirs, it was borrowed, stolen from someone else's fear, plastered over with a grin that didn't reach the eyes. They leaned on arrogance like a crutch, speaking with certainty, pointing fingers, declaring rules that didn't exist. They believed that boldness could mask insecurity, that bluster could hide emptiness. But confidence that's borrowed is a ticking time bomb. It trembles in quiet moments, falters when the first sign of real pressure hits, and cracks when someone patient watches closely. You weren't fooled. You noticed the tiny tells, the hesitations, the forced laughter, the way their eyes darted when nobody was looking. That's where the truth hides. In the microseconds they forget to control. People around them might have cheered their words, nodded at their commands, believed in the facade. But the more they performed, the more fragile the performance became. And you were in the shadows, smiling at the irony, because you didn't need to join the act. Borrowed confidence is loud, but it's brittle. It's the sound of a hammer cracking ice, beautiful and dangerous and inevitable. You could feel the tension rising, like a storm building on the horizon. And it excited you, thrilled you, because chaos is the playground of the patient observer. They tried to convince themselves, tried to convince everyone, that control was theirs, that they were untouchable. But when you watched, when you truly looked, you saw it slipping. Every decision made to cover insecurity only highlighted it more. Every laugh that was too loud, every step that was too calculated, every smile that didn't quite meet the moment. It was a map, a breadcrumb trail leading straight to the truth. Their confidence was borrowed, and borrowed things always get taken back. You didn't need to act, didn't need to intervene, because knowing is a weapon. Observation is a kind of violence if wielded properly. While they built illusions, you built patience. While they sought applause, you sought clarity. While they spent their time pretending, you spent yours learning, watching, understanding the patterns that only patience can reveal. And in that silent accumulation, the truth became unavoidable, the reality unshakable, the power quietly shifting in ways they would never see coming. The cracks they tried to hide became gaping holes. Laughter became desperate. The words became thinner, lighter, and you could feel it all collapsing under its own weight. Borrowed confidence can never withstand the test of scrutiny, can never survive someone who notices the details others ignore. And that's why you were never surprised. You always knew it, always felt it, always waited with that slow, knowing smile, as the perfect storm of their unraveling edged closer, inch by inch, subtle, inevitable, deliciously precise. Control. Oh, they loved the idea of it, didn't they? Like a child clutching a toy, spinning it around, convinced no one else could take it from them. They strutted through life, thinking they held the strings, that every reaction, every thought, every tiny action around them could be guided, bent, manipulated to their will. But control is a funny thing. It's not a hand you can grip and hold forever. It's a dance, a shadow, a whisper that slips through your fingers when you're not paying attention. And when fear enters the room, control shatters like glass under a hammer. They never saw it coming. Oh, they thought they were untouchable, untangled from consequence, perched high above the chaos they were sure they commanded. But fear is patient. It creeps in, subtle, unnoticed at first. A hesitation here, a flicker of doubt there, a question left unanswered. And suddenly, the walls they built to contain everything begin to wobble. Panic doesn't announce itself with a trumpet. It hides in tiny cracks, in fleeting expressions, in the hands that shake just slightly when no one is looking. They ignored it, of course. They always do. Ignoring the small tremors makes the eventual collapse louder, more spectacular. They barked orders, demanded obedience, tried to cement their dominion over the room, the people, the situation itself. And for a moment, it seemed to work. But control that is demanded rather than earned is a paper crown. Fragile, temporary, waiting for a gust of wind, or a subtle shift in attention to be swept away. You watched as they grew frantic, as the illusion of power they so desperately clung to began to wobble. Every overreaction, every defensive word, every miscalculated gesture was a confession. Control wasn't theirs. It never was. They just thought it was, and that delusion is far more dangerous than outright chaos. Fear, you see, is contagious. It infects the air around them, spreading faster than they can comprehend. And as they scramble, as they overcompensate, as they try to tighten the grip they already never had, their world unravels with spectacular precision. You see the pieces falling, the cracks widening, the facade crumbling, and there's a perverse thrill in watching them wrestle with a truth they refuse to face. Control isn't a possession. It's a state of mind, delicate, fleeting, and impossible to manufacture under pressure. Meanwhile, you remain calm, smiling in the shadows. You know the rules they think they set, and you know how fragile their game is. Patience is your ally, observation your weapon. You don't force chaos, you allow it to unfold, allow fear to loosen their grip, allow their own illusions to betray them. The more they try to assert control, the less they have. The more they panic, the clearer the patterns become. The more they resist, the more inevitable their unraveling becomes. And in that dance of tension you thrive, while they fight the invisible currents, trying desperately to hold what was never theirs. You glide through the chaos like it was choreographed just for you. Fear is their undoing. Control was never theirs to begin with. And as the cracks deepen, as the tension snaps and splinters, you see it all. The beautiful, inevitable collapse of the one thing they thought they could command. The illusion of power dissolving under its own weight, leaving only the raw, delicious truth of vulnerability exposed. You saw it first. Oh yes, you noticed the little things that no one else paid attention to. The twitch of a finger, the pause in a laugh, the way their eyes flickered just slightly when they thought nobody was looking. Everyone else was too busy applauding, too busy playing along with the grand performance, too busy blinded by the loud, the flashy, the obvious. But you were watching, patiently, silently, knowing that the cracks, no matter how small, always tell the story before the collapse. It starts with subtle shifts. A hesitation in their voice, a misstep in a plan, a detail overlooked because arrogance has a funny way of blinding people. They think they're untouchable, untouchably clever, untouchably in control. They never consider the observer, the one sitting quietly, absorbing every motion, every tone, every inconsistency. You notice patterns, the little betrayals of their own ego, the moments when they try too hard to convince themselves, to convince the world, that nothing is amiss. And in those moments, you see the truth more clearly than anyone else ever could. Others might have been shocked, surprised, caught off guard. But not you. You anticipated it. You felt it building like a storm on the horizon, quiet at first, teasing, playful, then growing in intensity until it could no longer be ignored. They stumble, trying to maintain their illusion, and every misstep only highlights the cracks you already knew were there. Their panic, their desperation, their attempts to regain control. They are the loud confessions that the weak are always forced to make. You watch them weave their web of deceit, their intricate dance of manipulation, thinking it clever, thinking it secure. But manipulation, like all fragile things, collapses when it meets patience. The moment they underestimated the observer, the patient one, the one who noticed the warning signs long before anyone else, is the moment their story began to unravel. Every miscalculation, every forced laugh, every erratic gesture becomes part of a mosaic that only you can see in its entirety. The picture of their impending failure is already drawn, and the pieces are moving into place without a single push from you. Power, influence, dominance. They try to hold it tightly, but it slips like water through clumsy hands. They panic, lashing out, overcompensating, trying to fill the emptiness they never acknowledged. The illusion of control shatters piece by piece. And while everyone else is shocked, bewildered, scrambling to understand, you are calm, knowing, satisfied in that quiet, dangerous way of someone who sees the truth unfold before it strikes. And isn't it delicious? Watching them flail, their perfect mask cracking, revealing all the insecurity and uncertainty they tried to hide. You predicted it. You felt it. You lingered in the shadows, letting them run, letting them stumble, letting the illusion collapse under its own weight. And every moment of their misjudgment confirms what you already knew, that anticipation, patience, and keen observation always triumph over arrogance and ignorance, even when the world cheers for the blind, oblivious fool. Panic is a beautiful thing. Most people fear it, try to hide it, bury it under a mask of confidence. But not you. You recognize it for what it is: a confession, a truth screaming to be acknowledged, a slip in the carefully constructed illusion they so desperately want everyone to believe. They call it chaos, they call it luck, they call it a fluke. Anything to avoid looking in the mirror and admitting the cracks you've been observing all along. And the more they run from it, the louder it becomes, like a drumbeat echoing through a theater of fools. You watch as they flail, as they overreact, as they make decisions born not of strategy, but of fear. Fear twists their words, bends their actions, and warps the reality around them. It's deliciously predictable. The louder they shout, the more transparent they become. Their attempts to mask uncertainty only make it easier for you to see, easier to anticipate, easier to exploit in the quiet corners of your mind where patience reigns supreme. They can't hide the trembling hands, the skipped beats in their voice, the way their eyes dart toward non-existent exits, as if searching for salvation in a world that will not save them. Panic reveals everything. The cracks in their armor, the fragility of their ego, the lies they told themselves to keep control just a heartbeat longer. You notice it all: the stammer in their speech, the hesitation in their movements, the tiny betrayals of body language that signal the collapse no one else sees coming. And as they scramble, trying desperately to regain command, it only confirms what you already know: control was never theirs, and the illusion of dominance is a dangerous game when observed closely. They try to mask it with anger, with bluster, with the kind of overcompensation that only highlights their weakness. But fear doesn't lie. It spreads, it infects, it bends the world to its own rhythm, and they are powerless to stop it. The more they resist, the more obvious it becomes. Every decision born from panic, every frantic attempt to regain composure, every shallow smile meant to fool the crowd, it all paints a portrait of vulnerability, a story that only someone patient and observant can read fully. And you do. You read it. You savor it. While they scream and flail and demand order from a world already slipping through their fingers, you remain calm, detached, almost amused. You understand the patterns of fear, the way it spreads, the way it corrodes confidence, the way it transforms self-assured arrogance into frantic chaos. And in that understanding, you gain power. Not by force, not by deception, but by witnessing the inevitable, by being the observer who sees what everyone else refuses to acknowledge. Their panic becomes your advantage. The more they panic, the clearer the path forward becomes. The more they try to assert authority, the more fragile they appear. And as they unravel, as their mask slips, As the illusion of control collapses spectacularly, you are there, watching, knowing that the fear they tried to hide has become their undoing, their confession, their own trap laid carefully by the mind that never panicked, never doubted, never faltered. Power shifts quietly. Oh, they never see it coming, do they? They strut, they declare, they make noise, thinking that volume is authority, that aggression is dominance, that everyone will bend because they refuse to blink. But power isn't loud. Power isn't announced with speeches or threats or exaggerated gestures. Power is subtle, almost imperceptible, like a shadow moving across a room without anyone noticing. And while they were busy performing, you were noticing, waiting, learning, watching how the tides of influence tip silently, inexorably, like water carving stone. It begins in small ways. A glance that goes unchallenged, a suggestion that slips through the cracks, a hesitation that goes ignored. They call it nothing, a fluke, a mistake. You call it everything because every shift, no matter how small, is a thread in the web of dominance. And they never see it. Oh no, they never see the accumulation of tiny failures, the way their control erodes piece by piece, while they remain blind to the storm brewing beneath the surface. And when the moment arrives, when the shift becomes undeniable, it feels sudden, catastrophic, but in truth, it has been building quietly all along. They fight, of course. They resist with teeth and claws, with anger and arrogance, trying desperately to hold on to what slips through their fingers. But control is never theirs to keep forever. Influence, power, authority, they are borrowed from perception, sustained by fear and respect, and when those foundations crack, the toppling is inevitable. And you watch, smile twisting on your face as they stumble, misstep, overreach, as they panic and lash out at shadows, blind to the currents moving beneath their feet. Every miscalculation, every display of desperation, every frantic attempt to maintain dominance only accelerates the shift. And isn't it exquisite to see the quiet moments ignored by the world? The subtle gestures, the hesitations, the overlooked opportunities turn into an unstoppable momentum. They believe the world bends to their will, that the people around them follow because of loyalty, skill, strength. But the truth is far more delicate, far more delicious. Loyalty falters, skill is overrated, strength is nothing without patience and perception, and you have both. Patience to wait, perception to understand, vision to see the shift before it becomes visible, before the tremors become earthquakes, before the walls crumble. The power moves in silence, like a predator circling its prey, unnoticed until it strikes. They scream, they resist, they try to assert dominance, but the shift doesn't care. It doesn't negotiate, it doesn't beg, it doesn't wait for permission. The small cracks widen, the momentum grows, and suddenly the world they thought they controlled belongs to someone else. And you, the quiet observer, the one who saw the pattern, the one who noticed the hesitation, before it became a collapse, move forward with the ease of inevitability. Every gesture they make to regain control, every desperate command, Every attempt to assert authority only confirms the truth you've known all along. Power is never static. Dominance is never guaranteed, and the quiet, patient, observant always claim the throne when the loud, arrogant, and careless fall. The shift is unstoppable, the collapse predictable, and the victory reserved for those who wait, who watch, and who understand that the world never surrenders to noise alone. You were ready. Oh, they never suspected it, did they? They thought you were fumbling, hesitating, figuring things out, waiting for permission from the world to move. They laughed at your patience, mocked your calm, dismissed the quiet observation that hummed beneath your every action. But that's the thing about preparation. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't flash neon signs or beg for attention. It sits, simmering, hidden in plain sight, and when the moment arrives, it strikes with a precision that leaves the unprepared scrambling, bewildered, exposed. They built illusions, towers of arrogance and borrowed confidence, believing that no one could touch them, that no one could see through the cracks they carefully masked. And you watched, studied, memorized every flaw, every hesitation, every weakness. You didn't need to rush, didn't need to attack, didn't need to prove anything. Observation is a weapon, and patience is its amplifier. While they danced in their delusions of grandeur, you read the patterns, noticed the microsecond shifts that revealed their panic long before it became visible, and stored it all, quiet, ready, waiting. They tried to control the narrative, to dominate the room, to assert power with volume and spectacle. But control is always temporary, always fragile when it is demanded rather than earned. They panicked, overcompensated, and scrambled, leaving trails of vulnerability like breadcrumbs in a forest, each one leading directly to the inevitable truth you had anticipated. They misjudged you completely, of course. That is their greatest mistake. They assumed patience was weakness, silence was submission, observation was inactivity. Oh, how deliciously wrong they were. When the tipping point arrives, it is subtle at first. A flicker of hesitation here, a stumble there, a glance that betrays the chaos beneath the surface. And you move. Not because you need to, not because you are pressured, not because they demand it. You move because the stage has been perfectly set by their own errors, their own panic, their own arrogance. And in that movement, all the preparation, all the patience, all the careful observation, all the quiet understanding of their patterns comes together in a single, unstoppable current. It's almost poetic. They built the walls, crafted the traps, spread the illusions, and you simply let it unfold, knowing the collapse would be theirs alone. Every overreaction, every desperate gesture, every misstep only confirmed what you already knew, that readiness is not about speed, not about noise, not about theatrics. Readiness is quiet, unyielding, invisible until the precise moment it becomes unavoidable. And you were there every second, calculating, anticipating, savoring the inevitability that they never saw coming. They underestimated you, mocked you, tried to distract you, and all the while, You collected the pieces they left behind. You were patient. You were attentive. You were ready. And when the moment finally arrived, when the world shifted, when their borrowed control dissolved into panic and chaos, it was not a surprise. You saw it coming, knew it was coming, and had already positioned yourself perfectly, silently, invisibly, to step into the space they foolishly abandoned.